So, let's go. Number 1, we are the Martians. You think of Mars as the destination, the far shore, the place nobody has ever stood waiting for the first human boot to break the dust. Hold on to that feeling because the first theory takes it away from you. Right now, sitting in labs and museums on Earth, there are more than 100 rocks that came from Mars. Nobody flew them here. No mission brought them home. Mars threw them at us. An asteroid slams into the Martian surface hard enough to fling debris up past the planet's own gravity, and those pieces drift for a while, and eventually, some of them fall out of the sky over Antarctica or the Sahara and land at your feet. Mars has been mailing itself to Earth for as long as there has been an Earth to hit. One of those rocks is called ALH 84001. It crystallized more than 4 billion years ago when Mars was young. It got blasted off the surface about 16 million years ago. It drifted through the dark, cold, silent, and about 13,000 years ago, it came down on the ice. And here's the part that should bother you. When scientists studied it, they found that the inside of that rock probably never got hotter than about 40 degrees. The impact that launched it didn't cook it. The interior stayed cool the whole way, which means a rock can leave Mars, cross the void, and arrive at Earth without ever burning what's sealed inside it. Now follow that thought where it wants to go. Mars was warm and wet earlier than Earth was stable. If life got started there first, even as something simple, something microscopic, something clinging to the inside of the rock, then those rocks carried it down through a young Earth's sky, into a young Earth's oceans, into the chemistry that eventually, slowly, became everything. Became the fish, became the forests, became you. You are not necessarily going to Mars to explore it. You might be going back. And nothing feels the same after you've had that thought. Number 2, Mars was alive first. Set the ancestry idea down for a second. You don't even need it. Mars might have beaten Earth to the finish line on its own terms. Look at what the rocks are telling us. Crystals locked inside Martian meteorites show that there was liquid water on Mars around 4.45 billion years ago. Not a trickle. Warm water moving through the young crust driven by heat from below, the same kind of hot vents that on Earth are one of the leading suspects for where life first switched on. Some readings push the possibility of a livable Mars back even further to around 4.48 billion years ago. That is potentially 500 million years before the earliest fingerprints of life we can find on our own planet. Think about why that could happen. Mars is small. A small planet cools fast. It settled down, grew a crust, held onto water while Earth was still a violent, half-molten mess getting slapped by leftover chunks of the early solar system. For a stretch of time, often placed somewhere between 3.5 and 4.2 billion years ago, Mars had exactly what you'd want. Water, warmth, chemistry, time. So picture the surface you're planning to walk on, not the dead orange desert of today. A younger Mars, damp and dim and quiet, where the first things that could be called alive might have already been feeling their way across the mud. No eyes, no thoughts. Just the raw beginning of it, happening there, while Earth was still deciding whether it wanted to be a planet at all. If that happened, then the surface had explorers long before you. They didn't have flags or names, they just had a head start you can't ever catch. Number 3, you won't even be the first human. Come back down to the ground for this one. Forget microbes and ancient rock. There's a plainer way you get beat into Mars, and it's happening in real budgets right now. You probably picture the first Mars astronaut planting a specific flag. Maybe you even know which one you're picturing. But another country has already said the quiet part out loud. China has publicly set a target to send its first crewed mission to Mars around 2033, with more crewed launches sketched in for the years after, and the plan doesn't stop at a visit. It's a base. People living there. Machines already scouting landing sites and learning to pull resources out of the ground before anyone arrives, and they're not waiting to start. A robotic mission to grab Martian soil and fly it home has been pulled forward, aimed at around 2028, years ahead of where a lot of people expected it. The scouting comes first, then the samples, then the crew. So the first human on Mars might not share your flag, your language, or your idea of what the moment means. It's not a cosmic mystery, it's a schedule. It's a race being run while you watch, and the finish line is a real date on a real calendar, close enough now that a kid alive today could be the one stepping off the ladder. You always assumed being first was a question about humanity. It might just be a question about who booked the earlier launch. Number 4, we already contaminated it. Here's where it gets uncomfortable because the next explorers to reach Mars weren't people at all. They were passengers. And we sent them by accident. We built our spacecraft in clean rooms, filtered air, scrubbed surfaces, technicians sealed head to toe. And still, when you count what's left on a finished spacecraft, there are somewhere around 1,000 bacterial spores clinging to every square meter of it. You cannot sterilize a machine completely. You can only lower the number. Something always survives the cleaning. Now put that machine on Mars. A study modeling exactly this found that the sunlit outside of a lander gets effectively sterilized fast, within about 1 Martian day, cooked clean by ultraviolet light. But the inside is a different world. The cold internal surfaces, tucked in the shadows of the hardware, can shelter living microbes for years. For decades. Under some conditions, it could take around 25 years just for the pressure to finish them off. And the study named names: Pathfinder, Phoenix, Mars, Polar Lander, Beagle 2, Schiaparelli. Machines we sent, some of which crashed, some of which simply died where they landed. Inside the corpses of those spacecraft, there may be Earth bacteria that are still technically alive on Mars right now. Sit with that. Before any astronaut ever breathes through a Mars helmet, our own life is already there, not thriving, not conquering, just holding on in the dark of a dead robot, an advanced party we never meant to deploy, waiting in the one place on the planet we swore we'd keep clean. Number 5, the natural highway. Maybe you're thinking life needed us. Needed our rockets, our fumbling, our accidental spores. It didn't. The road between the planets was open long before we showed up, and things have been using it. We already know rocks make the trip both ways. An impact big enough throws surface material off a planet and into space, and some of it drifts until another planet's gravity catches it. The question was never whether rock can travel. The question was whether anything living could ride it and survive the violence of getting launched. So scientists tested it. They took real microbes, tough ones, spores and cyanobacteria and lichen, packed them into rock, and hit that rock with the exact kind of shock a meteorite feels when it's blasted off a planet, pressures ranging across the brutal span that real Martian meteorites actually record. And some of the microbes lived. Squeezed by forces that should have erased them, they came out the other side still viable. That's just the first step of the trip, the ejection. But a big enough rock does the rest of the work too. Its own mass shields whatever's inside from the radiation of the long crossing, like a lead coffin drifting between worlds with something dormant sleeping in the middle. So picture it running on its own. For billions of years, no engineers required. Earth flings a rock at Mars. Mars flings one back. Each one may be carrying a few sleeping passengers. A slow, blind, automatic ferry service between two planets that never agreed to it. If that highway is real, then life has been exploring Mars since before we could walk. We're not opening the route. We're just the first ones to notice it exists. Number 6, life never left. Everything so far has been about the past or about machines. This one is about right now, and it's the one that changes what your first step on Mars might actually mean. The surface of Mars can't hold open water. The air is too thin, the cold too deep. A puddle would boil and freeze almost at once. For a long time, that felt like the end of the conversation, but it isn't, because of salt. Martian soil is full of strange salts called perchlorates, measured at real sites at a fraction of a % of the dirt. And salts like that do something sneaky. They pull water vapor right out of the air and dissolve into it, forming a thin, cold, extremely salty liquid. A brine that can exist where pure water never could, especially just under the surface where a thin lid of soil slows it from vanishing. Tuck that brine into the shallow subsurface and you have something Mars isn't supposed to have: liquid water. Now, could anything live in something that harsh? We keep finding out the answer is yes, further than we expect. In the lab, a yeast has been grown in a perchlorate brine, so concentrated it should be lethal. Salt levels far past anything in Earth's oceans, and it grew anyway. Life's tolerance for punishment is wider than the planet's cruelty. None of this proves anything is down there. Being livable is not the same as being lived in. But it means the first drill into the right patch of Martian ground is not guaranteed to come up empty. It might come up occupied, and if it does, you didn't discover the residents. You just finally knocked on a door that was always there. Number 7. Someone left Mars first. Now the ground under this video changes, and I want to be honest with you about the exact moment it happens. Everything up to here has been real science, measured rocks, and named missions and lab results. What comes next is not that. This is where we step off the map, and you deserve to know you're stepping. Because for decades, some people have believed someone got to Mars before us and left something behind. It started with a photograph. On July 25th, 1976, a Viking orbiter snapped an image of a region called Cydonia, and there, staring back out of a 2-kilometer hill, was a face, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, a human expression carved into another planet, caught in the low light. And a certain part of the human mind took one look and decided that could not possibly be an accident. For years it lived as one of the great what-ifs, a monument, a message, proof that we were late to a place someone had already claimed. Then the better cameras came. Later orbiters went back to Cydonia and photographed that same hill in sharp detail, from new angles in different light. And the face melted. It became what it always was, an eroded lump of Martian rock worn by wind and time, wearing a face only because our brains bolt a face onto everything, and only in that one flattering slant of shadow. The science closed the case, but the idea never fully died, and that tells you something. We want the marks to be there. We want to arrive somewhere and find that we were expected. Number 8, something is already watching. So here's the last one, and it's the quietest, and it might be the one that stays with you tonight. Not that someone reached Mars before us, that someone is there to see us reach it. Back in 1960, a scientist floated a strange idea. If a civilization out there wanted to keep an eye on younger worlds, it wouldn't waste centuries beaming radio signals into the dark and waiting. It would send a probe. A silent, patient machine, parked and dormant, set to do nothing at all until the locals crossed some line, learned to use radio, learned to leave their own planet, and then it would wake up. A watcher, sleeping, waiting for you to become interesting. And more recently, researchers pointed out that if such a watcher existed near us, there are obvious places to hide it. Small objects that share Earth's orbit, drifting along beside us for ages, close by cosmic standards, barely studied, easy to overlook. Nobody has found anything. There is no evidence any of this is real, and I'm telling you that plainly. But run the picture anyway. You cross the whole cold gap to Mars. You take the step humanity dreamed about for 1,000 years. You plant the boot in the red dust, and you feel for 1 second completely, gloriously alone at the edge of everything. And out in the dark behind you, something that has been waiting a very long time quietly notes that the locals have finally arrived. You spend your whole life afraid the universe is empty. The worst thought is that it isn't, and it already knows your name. For all our dreaming about being first, the frontier was never really empty, and it never really waited for us. The only thing left to be first at is the moment you finally understand that. Mars was never the blank page. We were just the last ones to read it.